Marcus Chun stood in the center of the great hall, surrounded by 12 massive seats that towered above him like monuments. Each seat held a different alien species, their eyes fixed on the human who dared to defend his people. The air felt thick and heavy, filled with the strange smells of different alien worlds. The Veluxian judge in the center seat looked down at Marcus with 4 cold, black eyes. Its blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights of the courtroom. Next to it sat a creature that looked like a giant spider made of metal, clicking its legs against the floor in a rhythm that sounded almost like laughter. Human Marcus Chun, the Veluxian judge, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through broken glass. You stand accused of breaking the preservation protocol. You attacked the Zephyrian Collective during their rightful expansion into Sector 7. How do you answer? Marcus lifted his chin and looked directly at the judge. His hands were bound behind his back, but his voice was strong and clear. I defended innocent people. The Zephyrians attacked civilian colonies without warning. We had every right to protect ourselves. A low growling sound came from one of the other judges, a creature covered in thick fur with teeth like knives. Rights? It snarled. Humans speak of rights while they wage war like savages. You disrupted a perfectly planned territorial agreement. Territorial agreement? Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. You mean the plan where you gave away human colonies to your friends without asking the people who lived there? Where you decided that human lives didn't matter as long as your politics stayed neat and clean. The metal spider creature's legs clicked faster. Emotional species, it said in a voice like grinding gears. This is why humans cannot be trusted with important decisions. You react with violence instead of logic. Marcus thought about the families he had saved, the children who were still alive because he had fought for them. Logic? You call it logical to sacrifice innocent people for your convenience? We didn't start that fight, but we finished it. The Veluxian judge raised one long, thin arm for silence. The evidence is clear. Commander Chun led military forces against a sanctioned expansion effort. This action resulted in the deaths of over 3,000 Zephyrian soldiers and the destruction of valuable infrastructure. The preservation protocol exists to prevent exactly this kind of barbaric warfare. The preservation protocol is supposed to protect all species, Marcus said. Not just the ones you favor. Those colonists had families, dreams, lives worth living. They weren't just numbers on your territorial charts. Another judge, this one looking like a giant jellyfish floating in a tank of green water, pulsed with angry light. Humans always think they are special. They believe their emotions matter more than galactic stability. This is why your species requires supervision. Marcus clenched his fists behind his back. Supervision? Is that what you call it when you take our worlds and give them away? When you ignore our representatives in council meetings? When you treat us like children who can't make our own decisions? The room fell silent for a moment. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. He knew what was coming next, but he wouldn't beg. He had done the right thing, and he would stand by that choice, no matter what it cost him. The Veluxian judge looked at the other 11 members of the tribunal. One by one, they nodded their agreement. Some looked sad, others seemed pleased, but the result was the same. Marcus Chen, the judge said, its voice carrying across the vast hall like a death sentence. This tribunal finds you guilty of violating the preservation protocol. Your actions have shown that humans cannot be trusted to follow galactic law when it conflicts with their primitive emotions. Marcus stood straighter. My emotions? You mean my conscience? My refusal to let innocent people die for your political games? Your refusal to accept proper authority, the judge corrected. Your species' dangerous tendency to choose violence over negotiation. However, this tribunal believes in mercy. We will not execute you directly, as that would make us no better than the barbarians we seek to civilize. A cold feeling settled in Marcus's stomach. He knew enough about galactic law to understand that their mercy might be worse than a quick death. Instead, the judge continued, "You will be exiled to Kepler 442c. You will have the chance to prove that human adaptability is more than mere propaganda. If you can survive on that world, you will have earned your freedom." Marcus had heard of Kepler 442c. Everyone in the galaxy had. They called it the Maw because it swallowed everything that touched its surface. No one had ever survived there for more than 3 days. It was a death sentence disguised as mercy. "You will be given basic survival supplies," the judge explained. "Food and water for 3 days, a shelter that should last 1 week if properly maintained, and a recording device to document your experience for scientific purposes. You will also receive a distress beacon, though rescue from Kepler 442c is forbidden by galactic law." The metal spider clicked its approval. Perhaps the human will provide useful data about survival limits before the inevitable end. Marcus looked around the room at the 12 faces staring down at him. Some showed pity, others satisfaction, but none showed doubt about his fate. They had already written him off as dead. "I accept your sentence," Marcus said quietly. The Veluxian judge seemed surprised. "You do not wish to appeal? To beg for a different punishment?" "No," Marcus replied. "I won't beg to people who think human lives are worthless. But I want you to remember something. You're not sending me to Kepler 442c because I was wrong. You're sending me there because I was right, and that scares you." The judge's 4 eyes narrowed. "Remove the prisoner. Prepare him for transport." As the guards led Marcus away, he called back over his shoulder, "I'll see you again." The sound of alien laughter followed him out of the courtroom, but Marcus wasn't afraid. He had survived worse things than hostile planets. He had survived politicians. The transport ship dropped Marcus onto the surface of Kepler 442c like it was dumping garbage. He hit the ground hard, his survival pack scattering across the rocky terrain. The ship disappeared into the dark sky before he could even stand up. Leaving him alone on the most dangerous planet in known space, Marcus pushed himself to his feet and immediately felt the crushing weight of the planet trying to force him back down. The gravity here was 3 times stronger than Earth's, making every movement feel like he was carrying another person on his back. His bones ached and his muscles screamed, but he forced himself to stay upright. The air burned his lungs even through the breathing mask they had given him. The atmosphere was filled with chemicals that would kill him in minutes without protection. Above him, the sky was a sickly yellow color, filled with clouds that promised acid rain. In the distance, he could see mountains that glowed red with volcanic activity. Marcus gathered his scattered supplies and took inventory. 3 days of food tablets, a water recycler good for maybe a week, a basic shelter that looked like it would fall apart in the first strong wind, and the recording device. He also had a knife, a small medical kit, and the distress beacon he was forbidden to use. He activated the recording device and held it up. Day 1 on Kepler 442c. The tribunal was right about one thing. This place wants to kill everything that steps foot on it. But they made one mistake. They forgot that humans come from a world that tried to kill us for millions of years, and we're still here. The first priority was shelter. Marcus looked around at the barren landscape and saw nothing but jagged rocks and pools of steaming liquid that definitely wasn't water. The prefab shelter in his pack was meant to be temporary protection, not a permanent home. He needed to find somewhere more secure. A low rumbling sound made him turn around. Something the size of a school bus was moving toward him across the rocks. It had 6 legs, armor plating that looked thicker than spaceship hull, and a mouthful of teeth designed for crushing bone. Its eyes glowed green in the dim light. Marcus didn't run. Running in this gravity would only tire him out and make him easier prey. Instead, he stood perfectly still and watched the creature approach. It moved slowly, testing the air with what looked like sensor organs near its mouth. When it got within 20 feet, it stopped and studied him. For a long moment, human and alien predator stared at each other. Marcus could feel his heart pounding, but he kept his breathing steady. The creature tilted its massive head, as if trying to figure out what this small, strange animal was doing on its hunting ground. Then thunder crashed overhead, and the first drops of acid rain began to fall. The creature made a sound like a diesel engine starting up and lumbered away toward a cave entrance. Marcus hadn't noticed before. The acid rain hissed when it hit the rocks, leaving small pits in the stone. Marcus grabbed his pack and ran for the same cave, hoping the creature would be too busy taking shelter to care about uninvited guests. The cave was larger than it looked from outside, stretching back into darkness. Marcus could hear the creature somewhere deeper in the tunnel system, but it didn't seem interested in coming back to investigate. He set up his shelter just inside the entrance, where he would be protected from the acid rain but still have an escape route if needed. The rain continued for 6 hours. Marcus used the time to explore the parts of the cave system that didn't smell like giant predator. He found something interesting near the back of one tunnel. The walls were covered with a mineral that seemed to neutralize acid when he tested it with drops of rainwater. He also found bones scattered across the cave floor, some from creatures he couldn't identify, and others that looked disturbingly familiar. "Day 1, evening report," he said to the recording device. "Found bones from previous prisoners in the cave. Looks like I'm not the first person they've dumped here, but I noticed something the others might have missed. These bones aren't all from alien species. Some of them are definitely human." Marcus picked up what was clearly a human skull and studied it carefully. The tribunal has been using this place as an execution site for longer than they admitted. How many people have they murdered here under the pretense of mercy? When the acid rain finally stopped, Marcus ventured outside to see what the storm had done to the landscape. The rocks were pitted and scarred, and new pools of toxic water had formed in low areas. But he also noticed that some of the local plants seemed completely unaffected by the acid. Their leaves actually looked healthier after the rain. He carefully collected samples of the acid-resistant plants and some of the neutralizing mineral from the cave. If he could figure out how they worked, he might be able to improve his survival gear. The breathing mask they had given him was already showing signs of damage from the acidic air. That night, as Marcus tried to sleep on the hard cave floor with gravity pressing down on him like a heavy blanket, he heard sounds from outside. Not the rumbling of the large predator, but something else. Clicking sounds, like many small feet moving across rock. He looked outside carefully and saw them in the moonlight. Creatures about the size of dogs, but covered in scales that reflected light like mirrors. They were investigating the area where he had been standing earlier, following his scent trail. Their movements were quick and coordinated, like a pack of wolves. Marcus counted at least a dozen of them before he stopped watching and retreated deeper into the cave. The large predator that lived here didn't seem worried about the small pack hunters, which meant they probably knew better than to venture too deep into occupied territory. "Day 1. Final report," Marcus whispered to the recording device. "Multiple predator species, acid rain that can dissolve rock, gravity that's trying to crush me, and air that burns my lungs. The tribunal sent me here to die, and I can see why they thought it would work." He paused and looked around the cave that had become his temporary home. But they forgot something important. Humans don't give up. We adapt, we survive, and we remember who put us in situations like this. Marcus turned off the recording device and checked his water supplies. Tomorrow he would need to find a more reliable source of clean water and figure out how to make his food last longer. The pack hunters, Outside called to each other in high-pitched voices that echoed off the canyon walls. Marcus closed his eyes and listened to the sounds of an alien world trying to kill him. It reminded him of camping trips as a child, when his grandfather had taught him that the most dangerous thing in any wilderness was panic. "Don't panic," he whispered to himself. "Just survive." 6 months after being dumped on Kepler 442c, Marcus Chen was no longer the same man who had stood before the Galactic Tribunal. His body had adapted to the crushing gravity, building muscle and bone density that made him stronger than he had ever been on Earth. His skin was tougher now, scarred but resistant to the acidic environment. Most importantly, his mind had learned to think like a permanent resident of hell rather than a visitor hoping to escape. The cave system had become more than just shelter. Marcus had expanded it into a complex network of living spaces, workshops, and storage areas. He had learned to work with the large predator that originally lived there, a creature he had named Boulder due to its size and tendency to sleep in inconvenient places. Boulder had accepted Marcus as a non-threatening neighbor after realizing the human was useful for early warning about the smaller pack hunters. Marcus had also domesticated 3 of the smaller pack hunters, the mirror-scaled creatures he called scouts. It had taken months of careful feeding and patience, but now they helped him hunt and warned him about approaching dangers. Their natural ability to sense chemical changes in the air made them perfect for detecting incoming acid storms or the approach of larger predators. 6-month report. Marcus said to his recording device while preparing his evening meal. Establish permanent base with early warning systems and hunting assistance from local wildlife. Boulder keeps the big predators away from this area, and the scouts help me track game and avoid dangerous weather patterns. He had also solved the problems that killed most people sent to this world. Water came from a natural spring he had discovered deep in the cave system, filtered through the acid-neutralizing minerals that existed throughout the rock formations. Food was no longer a problem either. Marcus had learned to hunt the local wildlife safely and had even managed to grow some earth, vegetables using seeds he had saved from his ration packs. But his most important discovery had happened 3 months ago, when he had followed a scout deep into the unexplored sections of the cave network. In a cavern far below the surface, he had found something the tribunal never knew existed: intelligent life. The crystalline beings stood about 4 feet tall and looked like living glass sculptures shaped roughly like humans. They communicated through patterns of light that flickered through their transparent bodies, creating a language more beautiful than anything Marcus had ever seen. When they first met, both species had been cautious, but curiosity had overcome fear on both sides. The crystalline people called themselves something that translated roughly as those who endure. They had lived on Kepler 442c for thousands of years, treating the dangerous surface as a testing ground where only the worthy could survive. They had watched many condemned prisoners die over the centuries, always hoping someone would prove capable of meaningful contact. Marcus was the first. The tribunal doesn't know about them, Marcus told his recording device. They've been sending people here to die for generations, without realizing they were committing genocide against an intelligent species. The crystalline people have records of every prisoner who ever survived more than a day. There have been others who lasted weeks or even months, but none who adapted like humans can. Learning their light language had taken months, but Marcus discovered he could communicate using a handheld light device he had built from salvaged parts. The crystalline people were fascinated by his stories of the greater galaxy and horrified by what he told them about the tribunal's practices. In exchange for knowledge about the galaxy beyond their world, they had shared secrets that could revolutionize survival technology. The acid-neutralizing minerals weren't just naturally occurring. They were cultivated by the crystalline people using techniques passed down through generations. The same process could be used to create materials that would make hostile environment colonization possible on dozens of worlds the tribunal had written off as uninhabitable. Marcus had also discovered evidence of something much darker. In the deepest parts of the cave system, the crystalline people had preserved artifacts from other species that had been sent to die on their world. Weapons, tools, and records from civilizations that the tribunal had systematically eliminated by sending their leaders and thinkers to merciful death on Kepler 442c. They've been doing this for centuries, Marcus said, holding up a weapon that clearly belonged to a species he had never seen before. Whenever a civilization gets too independent or asks too many questions, key members mysteriously end up convicted of crimes and sent here to die. It's not justice. It's murder disguised as law. The crystalline people had shown him burial sites containing the remains of thousands of beings from dozens of different species. Each grave marker told the same story. Political leaders, scientists, military commanders, and anyone else who might threaten the tribunal's control over the galaxy. Marcus had spent the last month working with his crystalline allies to document everything. They had created detailed maps of the burial sites, translated key artifacts that proved the tribunal's systematic elimination of threats, and developed new technologies that would make their evidence impossible to ignore. The most impressive achievement was the biomechanical armor Marcus now wore. Created using crystalline growing techniques and materials from the cave system, it allowed him to survive in environments that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. More importantly, it was proof that the resources of Kepler 442c could be used to benefit the galaxy, instead of just disposing of unwanted people. Today marks 6 months since my arrival, Marcus said, making his final report of the day. I've established not just survival, but a thriving partnership with an intelligent species the tribunal doesn't know exists. Together, we've uncovered evidence of systematic genocide spanning centuries and developed technologies that could change how the galaxy approaches hostile environment colonization. He looked around his expanded cave home, where crystalline light sculptures provided gentle illumination, and Scout 3 was curled up near the entrance like a faithful guard dog. Boulder's snoring echoed from deeper in the cave system, a sound that had become as comforting as any lullaby. The tribunal sent me here to die quietly and disappear from galactic politics. They wanted to eliminate a threat to their authority without making me a martyr. But they made a critical error in their calculations. Marcus held up the distress beacon they had given him, its red light blinking steadily in the cave's dimness. They forgot that humans don't just survive. We improve everything we touch, including ourselves. Tomorrow I activate this beacon, but not because I need rescue. I'm calling them back because I'm ready to face my judges again. And this time, I'm bringing friends they never imagined existed. Through the transparent walls of their bodies, Marcus could see his crystalline allies preparing for the journey to the surface. 3 of them had volunteered to accompany him back to face the tribunal, ready to serve as living proof that the tribunal had been committing genocide for centuries. Marcus checked his armor systems one final time and made sure his documentation was secure. Evidence of mass murder, proof of systematic oppression, and technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization. It was more than enough to bring down the corrupt system that had sent him here to die. The tribunal thinks they've seen the last of Commander Marcus Chun, he said to the recording device. Tomorrow they learn they were wrong about that. They were wrong about everything. The great hall of the Galactic Tribunal fell silent as the main doors opened with a sound like thunder. Every conversation stopped. Every alien eye turned toward the entrance, where a figure in strange, gleaming armor walked with confident steps across the polished floor. The Veluxian judge's 4 black eyes widened in shock as it recognized the face behind the advanced helmet. "Impossible," it whispered, the words carrying across the suddenly quiet chamber. Marcus Chun removed his helmet and stood before the 12 massive seats where his judges waited. His appearance had changed dramatically during his 18 months on Kepler 442c. His skin was tanned and scarred, but healthy. His muscles had developed under the crushing gravity of the Deathworld, giving him the build of someone who could survive anything. Most importantly, his eyes held the confidence of a person who had conquered the impossible. Behind Marcus walked 3 beings the tribunal had never seen before. They looked like living sculptures made from crystal and light, their transparent bodies flickering with patterns of communication that painted rainbow colors across the chamber walls. "Members of the Galactic Tribunal," Marcus said, his voice strong and clear. "I have returned to face my judges, as promised." The metal spider creature in the second seat clicked its legs nervously against the armrests. "This cannot be real. No one survives Kepler 442c. Our records show no life signs from that world for over a year." "Your records show what you wanted them to show," Marcus replied. "Just like your laws show what you want them to show. Justice for some, death for others, and lies to cover the difference." The furry creature with knife-like teeth snarled from its seat. "Hallucination. The human died months ago. This is some kind of trick by his supporters." Marcus smiled and activated a device on his armor. A 3-dimensional image appeared in the center of the chamber, showing the cave systems of Kepler 442c in perfect detail. "Let me show you what you don't know about the world you use for executions." The image shifted to show the burial sites deep in the planet's caves. Thousands of graves, each marked with symbols that identified the species and crimes of those who had been sent to die. The tribunal members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as familiar names appeared in the display. "For over 300 years, Marcus continued, you have used Kepler 442c as a convenient way to eliminate anyone who threatens your authority. Political leaders who ask inconvenient questions. Scientists who make discoveries you can't control. Military commanders who refuse to follow illegal orders." The Veluxian judge found its voice. "These accusations are absurd. The Deathworld sentence is a legal form of execution, approved by galactic law and used only for the most serious crimes." "Serious crimes like defending innocent colonists?" Marcus asked. "Like questioning territorial agreements made without consulting the affected populations? Like refusing to quietly disappear when your corruption becomes inconvenient?" One of the crystalline beings stepped forward, its body flashing with rapid patterns of light. Marcus had taught it to use a translation device that converted its light language into galactic standard speech. "I am first speaker for those who endure," the crystalline being said, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We have lived on the world you call Kepler 442c for thousands of years. We have watched you murder the innocent in our home for centuries." The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the tribunal members realized they were facing a completely unknown intelligent species. The jellyfish-like being in its water tank pulsed with agitated colors. Unknown species making unsubstantiated claims. "There is no intelligent life on Kepler 442c, because you never bothered to look," the first speaker replied. "You saw only a convenient place to dispose of threats to your power. You never considered that others might call that world home." Marcus activated another device, and the chamber filled with recordings. Voices of condemned prisoners speaking their last words. Documents showing the real reasons for their sentences. And evidence of the tribunal's systematic elimination of anyone who opposed their authority. "Admiral Zex High of the Outer Rim Coalition," Marcus read from one file. "Officially sentenced for violation of trade regulations. Actually eliminated because she discovered your illegal weapon sales to both sides of the Centauri conflict. Dr. Vorth of the Scientific Assembly, he continued, officially sentenced for research protocol violations. Actually eliminated because his energy research threatened your control over power distribution to developing worlds. The list went on. Dozens of names, hundreds of victims, all sent to die on Kepler-4 42c for the crime of threatening the tribunal's stranglehold on galactic politics. The spider creature's legs clicked rapidly. Even if these accusations were true, which they are not, you have no legal standing to present evidence. You are a convicted criminal whose sentence was properly carried out. Was it? Marcus asked. According to galactic law, a Deathworld sentence is considered completed only when the condemned dies, or when they signal for rescue using the provided beacon. I never died, and I never called for rescue. I called for a return transport because my sentence was complete, and I had evidence of crimes that needed to be reported. The Veluxian judge leaned forward. You activated the distress beacon. That is a call for rescue, which is forbidden. I activated a communication device to request transport back to this chamber, Marcus corrected. There's a difference between rescue and return. I wasn't in distress. I was ready to come home. Another crystalline being stepped forward, carrying a device that projected images of the advanced technology they had developed with Marcus. Acid-proof materials, gravity manipulation systems, and environmental adaptation tools that could make dozens of uninhabitable worlds suitable for colonization. Your Deathworld sentence has produced something you never expected, Marcus said. Not just evidence of your crimes, but proof that the resources you waste on execution could instead be used to benefit the entire galaxy. Kepler 442c isn't a Deathworld. It's a treasure house that you've been using as a garbage dump. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The tribunal had not just been murdering their political opponents. They had been destroying opportunities for technological advancement and peaceful expansion that could have benefited billions of beings. The furry judge with the knife teeth tried one last defense. Even if some irregularities occurred in past sentences, this tribunal acted in good faith to maintain galactic order. The human survival does not invalidate the system. Good faith? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You sentenced me to death for defending innocent people. You've sentenced hundreds of others to death for similar crimes against your authority. You've committed genocide against an entire species by using their home world as your private execution ground. Marcus gestured to his crystalline allies, whose light patterns created a beautiful but somber display in the chamber. These beings trusted that justice existed in the galaxy. They watched your victims die for centuries, hoping that someday someone would survive long enough to tell the truth about what happens on Kepler 442c. I was that someone. The Veluxian judge's voice was quiet now, lacking its earlier authority. What do you want? Justice, Marcus replied simply. Real justice. Not the political convenience you've been calling law for 3 centuries. Marcus activated one final device, and the chamber filled with communication signals being broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The evidence, the testimony, and the proof of the tribunal's crimes were being transmitted to every news service, every government, and every citizen who could receive them. The galaxy is watching now, Marcus said. They're seeing what you really are, what you've always been. The only question now is whether you'll face the consequences with dignity or make it worse for yourselves. The great hall that had condemned him to death 18 months ago was now silent except for the soft sounds of crystalline communication and the clicking of nervous alien claws against stone. 2 years had passed since Marcus Chun walked back into the Galactic Tribunal with evidence that shattered 3 centuries of corrupt rule. The chamber where he had once been condemned now served as a memorial to the victims of the Deathworld executions. Their names carved in crystal, provided by the beings of Kepler-442c. Marcus, stood at the viewing port of the orbital station that now orbited the world formerly known as the Maw. Below him, the planet's surface was dotted with research facilities and training camps. Ships from dozens of different worlds came and went regularly, bringing students who wanted to learn survival techniques and scientists who studied the remarkable adaptations possible in extreme environments. "Ambassador Chun," a voice said behind him. Marcus turned to see Dr. Sarah Kim, the new head of the Hostile Environment Research Division. She was one of the first humans to join his training program, and she had adapted to the planet's challenges even faster than he had expected. "Just Marcus," he corrected with a smile. "How are the new trainees doing?" "Better than expected," Sarah replied. The Altarian delegation completed their gravity training ahead of schedule, and the Centauri engineers have made a breakthrough in acid-resistant construction materials. "Your crystalline friends have been incredibly helpful teachers." Through the viewing port, Marcus could see one of the training facilities where beings from various species learned to work together in hostile environments. The program had grown from his original idea of survival training into something much larger. A place where different species could learn to understand each other while facing common challenges. "The first speaker wants to show you something," Sarah continued. They finished the new memorial site. Marcus nodded and made his way to the transport bay. The shuttle ride down to the planet's surface had become routine, but he still felt a sense of homecoming every time his feet touched the rocky ground where he had learned to survive. The planet itself had been transformed. The acidic atmosphere was being slowly cleaned using techniques developed jointly by human engineers and crystalline biotechnology. Gravity had been partially reduced in the inhabited areas using technology that was still being perfected. Most importantly, the planet now had a name that honored its true nature, Haven. The first speaker met Marcus at the landing site, its crystal body glowing with patterns that he had learned to read as well as any language. "Welcome home, survivor who returns," it said. Using the title the crystalline people had given him, they walked together through pathways carved from the acid-neutralizing stone, past workshops where humans and aliens worked side by side on technologies that would make hostile world colonization safe and efficient. The air was filled with the sounds of construction, learning, and cooperation. "The memorial is ready," the first speaker said as they approached a section of the cave system that had been expanded into a vast underground chamber. The walls were covered with light sculptures that told the stories of everyone who had died on Haven over the centuries. Each light pattern was unique, preserving not just names and dates, but something of the personality and dreams of those who had been murdered by the tribunal's corrupt system. At the center of the memorial stood a simple stone monument with words carved in dozens of languages. They were sent here to die in darkness. They live now in light and memory. Marcus placed his hand on the stone and thought about all the people who had died alone in these caves, never knowing that their deaths served no purpose beyond political convenience. "They deserve better than this memorial," he said. "They have better," the first speaker replied, its body flashing with gentle patterns. "They have justice. They have change. They have a future where others will not suffer as they did." The political transformation of the galaxy had been swift and decisive once Marcus's evidence became public. 8 of the 12 tribunal members had been arrested for crimes against sentient life. 3 had fled to parts unknown, and the 12th had cooperated with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. The new galactic government was still taking shape, but its foundation was based on principles Marcus had helped write: transparency, representation for all species, and protection for developing civilizations. Most importantly, The Deathworld execution system had been abolished permanently. "Ambassador," a young voice called from across the memorial chamber. Marcus turned to see Alex Rodriguez, a 17-year-old from the human colonies, whose parents had been saved during the action that led to Marcus's original arrest. "Alex," Marcus said warmly. "How's the training going?" "Great. I passed the environmental adaptation course yesterday, and the crystalline teachers say I'm ready for advanced survival techniques." Alex paused and looked around the memorial chamber. "Is it true that some of these people were sent here just for trying to protect their families?" Marcus nodded. "Too many of them. That's why we do this training now. Not just to survive hostile environments, but to make sure that kind of injustice never happens again." Alex's expression was serious beyond his years. "I want to join the protection service when I finish training. My parents always said you saved them by standing up to the tribunal. I want to help make sure other families don't need saving." "That's a good goal," Marcus replied. "But remember, the best protection isn't fighting. It's building a system where fighting isn't necessary." As evening approached, Marcus made his way to his private quarters in the expanded cave system that had once been his desperate shelter. The rooms were comfortable now, with proper lighting and climate control. But he had kept some of the original stone walls as a reminder of where his journey had started. Boulders still lived in the deeper caves, though the massive predator had become something of a mascot for the research station. The scouts had bred successfully, and their offspring were being trained as environmental sensors for other hostile world colonies. Even the pack hunters that had once threatened him were now part of the ecological balance that made Haven a thriving world. Marcus sat at his desk and activated his recording device, just as he had done every night for over 3 years. "Final report," he said to the camera. "Haven Colony is now home to over 10,000 residents from 47 different species. The Hostile Environment Training Academy has graduated its first class of survival specialists, who are now helping to establish colonies on 12 previously uninhabitable worlds." He paused and looked around his quarters, where crystalline light sculptures cast gentle rainbows on the walls and photographs of friends from dozens of different worlds reminded him how much his life had changed. "The tribunal that sentenced me to death has been replaced by a democratic council that includes representatives from every known intelligent species, including the crystalline people who were ignored for so long. The new constitution includes protection for developing civilizations and strict oversight of any actions that might harm innocent populations." Marcus smiled as he thought about the irony of his situation. "They sent me here to disappear quietly into political history. Instead, I helped build a new kind of politics based on cooperation instead of dominance. They wanted to eliminate a threat to their authority. Instead, they created a system where that kind of authority can't exist." He stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the lights of Haven Colony. In the distance, he could see the training facilities where tomorrow's survival specialists were learning to turn impossible situations into opportunities for growth and understanding. "But the most important thing we've learned here isn't about survival techniques or political reform," Marcus continued. "It's about what happens when different species work together instead of trying to control each other. Humans aren't special because we're tougher or stronger or smarter than other species. We're special because we're willing to adapt, to learn, and to help others do the same." Marcus turned off the recording device and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, and new opportunities to build something better than what had come before. Outside his window, the stars of the galaxy shone down on a world that had been transformed from a place of death into a symbol of hope. The human who had been sentenced to die alone had instead learned to live with friends from across the stars. proving that even the most impossible situations could be survived with courage, determination, and the willingness to never give up. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but as long as beings were willing to work together and fight for justice, no world was truly a death sentence.